there's a lot of us. So I have the job tonight, a job I'm well skilled at actually from my years at Omega, being the hook, the compassionate hook. So if you just start kind of going on, I'll say, you go girl, but stop. And when people sometimes hear these words put together, feminism and spirituality, they kind of think, well, you can't be both. That's like an oxymoron, a feminist and a spiritual person. How have you dealt with marrying those two urges within yourself to be a feminist and to be connected to some sort of spiritual path?
The identity of being feminine or being Muslim or being American, I think if you alienate one, you're alienating all aspects of who you are. You have to actually think of yourself as a whole. And so for me, I'm a woman. I'm a person who believes in empowerment of women. I believe that feminism is about equity and justice, and that's really what, at its core, Islam is about. And so that's how I, justify being a Muslim, being a feminist, and being both.
Spirituality means to find my true self and to be useful in a deepest sense in this world. And feminism is a deeply spiritual movement. Women try to find their true self and try to be really useful in a deepest, fullest, holistic sense. So for me, feminism is spirituality.
My mom was my first priest. They say parents are your first teacher, your first clergy person, the one who teaches you about God. The first time I took communion, which in the Christian tradition is this little mini Passover, there's only grape juice and bread. There's no wonderful challah. But anyway, we missed it. And yeah, but anyway, not the good stuff, just the bread and the wine. So my mom leans over to me the first time I take this ritual as my first priest and says, Jacqui, when you take this bread, it means God loves you. And when you drink this cup, it means God will never leave you. So her feminine energy was kind of the foundation of my call to ministry and my faith, and they've been braided together for me ever since. It doesn't cross my mind for them to be pulled apart.
How do you describe the feminine, the quality of the feminine, and the quality of the masculine? And do you feel them both in yourself? Are they important constructs for you? And how are they showing up in the world today?
When I teach my rabbinical students, and also when I teach my students who are exploring their Hebrew priestess path, I teach them about the traditional resonances of masculine and feminine in the Kabbalah and elsewhere in Jewish tradition. But I really like to remind them that the feminine and the masculine are mysteries. Like, they appear to each of us in different ways. And you can know this because if you look at world myth, it's not all the same. Right? If you go to the Baltics, the sun is female. If you go to Rome, the sun is male. Right? If you go to ancient Sumer, the moon is male. If you go to ancient Greece, the moon is female. So for me, it's less about assigning qualities to genders and more about the ways that the masculine and the feminine erupt for us in surprising ways, and that we allow that to happen, and we not say, no, be quiet, you're not allowed to be that. Like, there has to be openness to the way that they manifest for us.
When you are in your position of power as spiritual leaders, how are you trying to change the whole paradigm and not just like become a leader in your church? I guess what I'm asking you is, how do you use your spiritual practice to be advocates for change?
I've been in the music industry for 12 years, and the last 4 years I've been undergoing a great personal and spiritual transformation. And going into that, I realized I had to tear my whole old life down and build it the way that I want it, the way that I want my life. And so I've been working on that, and out of that, it's also turned into building my business the way that I want it. And I realized through just my prayer and contemplation of my life that I was afraid to handle my own business because I didn't like the way the business people around me were. And I was like, that's how you do business, that's how you have to be, I don't want to do that. But I realized that I have the opportunity to do business in an ethical way, and it's just taking a chance. I'm just starting, but it feels good. I work harder than I ever did, but I feel good. When I go to bed at night, I'm not exhausted, I'm just regular tired.
When I teach as a professor or as a Dharma teacher, I remember this, what you just said. If you bring out what is within you will save you. And if you cannot bring out what is within you will destroy you.
One of my colleagues named Adrian had his little baby named Petal. And when Adrian was pregnant, and we knew she was going to be pregnant, we had never had, I'm the first woman since 1628 to be the senior minister of the collegiate churches. Wow. That's a kind of...
You go, girl.
I mean, that's a lot of men. That's a lot of men. We don't even have policies about how to have a baby. Well, we wrote a policy for Adrian and Petal about womanist sensibilities and gave her like goo-goo time off and made a space for the baby to come to. We all raised that baby in our church. And that to me is what it means to be a woman leader.
You know, I'm a mother of 3 sons. I'm a grandmother of 2 grandsons. And I love men. And I have noticed that the younger generation of men, I'm feeling kind of a wind of change in young men, especially young fathers, which is like so thrilling to me. Because something that, you know, Gloria Steinem has said for years is that it's not going to change only when the women change. It's going to change when the men change as well. Have you seen a change, let's say, toward more emotional intelligence, toward more of the feminine awakening in men?
Yeah, you know, I love that story of the man who handcuffed himself to his wife's hospital bed when she was going into labor so that he could get into the labor room. You remember that story? So now men can, you know, be present with their wives when they are having their babies. So yeah, there have been the visionaries. My father ran the house like, you know, a patriarchy. I never heard my mother call him by his first name. She called him Popsy. And he was very dictatorial, and he said, okay, no TV in this family, no TV, you can't watch. We had a TV, but he said you can only watch 1 show a week, and it was Father Knows Best. So, I mean, and so what Harville and it was a dominator-subordinator model, and Gloria Steinem said in the 70s, marriage is a dangerous place for women, and it was, and I'm so proud to be partnered with Harville Hendricks, and I've been a sort of a silent partner in creating a Imago theory that shifts that dominator-subordinator model to a partnership model of marriage.
I want to give kudos to 2 groups of people. One, I'm so deeply grateful to the male scholars who, along with many female scholars, are uncovering the history of women and the history of goddesses. I am writing a book called The Hebrew Priestess. I am dealing with articles and books all day long, and so many of them are written by men. The first book that was written that acknowledged the existence of the divine feminine in Judaism in any sustained way was Raphael Patai. I'm just very, very grateful to them. And the other thing I want to say is that I'm very proud of the young men and women around me who are actually rethinking gender, right? Who don't even necessarily identify with the gender with which they were born, or who do, but who are also open to the ways that they are like people of other genders. And I think that's very powerful, and for me, it's new.
It's not a mystery, it's not a secret that most religions are about love. Every religion is about love. And then a good deal of the wars fought in the world are fought in the name of religion, in the name of love. What are we going to do about this? And what is our particular role and skill and gift as women to speak feminine truth to this misuse of religion?
This idea of speaking for yourself is really important for women right now. You have to not just tell your story, but you have to seize your narrative. You have to not let people like me write your story for you. And I'm sitting here as a journalist being very antithetical to my profession by saying to you, you don't need me. You don't need me to tell your story. You don't need to submit an opinion piece to CNN.com to think that you've like made your mark on the world. You can tweet out your story, you can blog your story, you can YouTube your story. You can tell your story. Don't let somebody else tell it for you.
Thank you, everyone.